Time is 7:30, so we'll start. I think Rosha is still missing, and there is one person who was not able to join for this entire course. But that's okay. Hopefully, he can join the next one. Anyways, so yeah, yesterday I sent. Have anyone was the video from yesterday? Any questions that we
Uh,
wanted to?
yes, Arpan.
Yes.
I was watching the video.
Mm.
Good morning, first of all.
Yes.
Uh,
Good morning.
so, Arpan, I was watching the video and I actually you have talked about it, but I was struggling to understand that. So,
Okay.
in the P&L statement,
Hmm.
so if we see that release of expected incurred claims and other insurance service expenses. So under that revenue section, why that expenses is coming? Like you said that to get that revenue, we need to have their expenses. But I couldn't get that point actually. Could you please?
So you are saying that why expense is included here or here?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So it is I mean, I also mentioned that this is slightly counterintuitive. It's
Yeah,
easy to understand, but IFRS 17 is based on service concepts. So
correct.
basically, what they are saying is what amount of service you are kind of providing, and or what are the things that you are required to kind of provide the service. So in this case, they are assuming because there is for the first year the expected number of death is one, so 1 lakh
Okay.
would be paid at sum assured, and also the expenses that are supposed to be incurred is approximately I think that is coming out to be 50,000. So what they are saying is you are incurring a expense of 50,000 to give the service so that you can recognize the revenue. So that is the concept from which they are putting this. So 100 1 lakh for because it is the death benefit of that expense, and 50,000 because you are incurring because you have to get that revenue. Because if you do not incur the expense, then you will not get that revenue. So this is like how they have designed it in IFRS 17. IFRS 17 is based on service concepts. Instead of having the premium as revenue or investment income as revenue, they are saying this is what the service that you are going to give, and in order to give the service, you need to this expense. So that would become part of your revenue, and actually you end up paying this, which in this case is similar. So actually you end up paying this, so that the difference between these two would actually give you profit. Now, if you normally think about that, the difference between your like if 10 people are supposed to die, actually 9 people die, so that is your profit. So that is what is happening here. Then if you are supposed to incur an expense of 100 and you actually incur an expense of 90, so then that 10 rupees is your profit. Once again, that thing is happening here, that because these two are opposite sign, these two here, these are canceling out, but ultimately that will be captured here. So that is what they are trying to do. But the way they are, kind of designed this is based on IFRS 15, or which is the service concept. So slightly counterintuitive to understand. Maybe how you can understand this is, or how can, maybe remember this is whatever is the, present, whatever is present in the uh, reserve equation other than the premium. That will come here, like benefit and expense, that will come here, and same thing, so this is the expected number, this is the actual number. The difference between the expected and actual will give you the profit.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And one more thing.
Mm.
So so the first year, that actually I was having issue with that number, 15,638.
Okay.
So first of all, it was expected CSM release amount at end of the first year. If you go, could you please go to that cell E23?
E23.
Yeah, yes. So expected CSM release amount, that is first year, 15,638. So
Mm.
same amount there, CSM allocated to the period. My question is, CSM allocated to the period, so that is in minus. Could you please explain why that is in negative?
Where is it in minus? Here it is not in minus.
If you could you please go, please scroll right.
Here, this one.
Yeah, yes,
Okay,
yes,
so
yes.
this is your opening balance. This much you have this much you have gathered the interest on, and this minus 16 15 6 38 means that from this, like this was your start at the start, this was your CSM,
Correct.
and that CSM increased by the interest locked in.
Right.
Then from that balance, you are deducting this 15638 because that is being recognized in this year, which is this 15638. So overall, that final balance would be 54435 minus this 15638. So that would be the CSM that you will have left for the remaining year. So that is why it is kind of shown in minus, because it will be taken away from this year and it is recognized in this year. So the balance that you will have left for the remaining year would be this plus this minus this 15,638. Right. So that is the concept. It is taken
Uh,
this year and it is put into this year.
okay. So, if say suppose if it was not mentioned in that P&L section there,
Here.
so in yes, if it was not mentioned there, then it would have been a positive number here in the CSM allocated to
No, it has
period.
nothing. You are not understanding the concept. See, when you
Yeah,
start with
maybe.
see, suppose you have something, you start with an opening balance, right? Suppose
Yeah.
your parents are giving you 100 rupees every month.
Yes.
So if you and you have some expense as well, maybe you pay the mobile bill of 50 rupees, right? So this is the concept. So suppose you have 100 rupees at the start of the month, and
Mm.
say for that month you are getting an interest of say 5%. You have put
Mm.
it somewhere, you are getting a monthly interest of 5%, right?
Correct.
So then this is 5%, right? So then your interest would so this would become 1 plus 0.5, right? So this will become 105, right, at the end of the month.
Correct.
From that 105, you are giving away minus 50, right? Because you have to do some mobile recharge. And then this is the amount that is left. This plus this,
Mm.
right? So you started with 100 at the start, you got some interest of 5%, so that makes it 105. You are paying away some bill, right? Which is like you are recognizing some portion of that 105, which is this 50 rupees. So you are left with this 55. Now next year or next month, it will start with 55. And then again, you are going to get that same,
Right.
number. So this is why now if you have to show this 50 somewhere, like
Mm. Mm.
for that month, this 50 is your expense, or maybe in this case, this 50 is your profit, recognized profit. So that 50 is taken from this balance, right? So when
Okay.
CSM roll forward happens, that 50 is taken from this balance. So for this roll forward, this is a negative number, but this is by from it has nothing to do with the sign. It has to do with the roll forward, the concept of roll forward.
Okay. Okay. Uh,
Okay.
okay. Well, thank you.
Yes. Any question? Anyone else? Okay, I guess silence means no question. Okay. So, acha, before I start, just tomorrow should we start at same time, or tomorrow should we start maybe in the afternoon? Or what does that? I mean, just wanted to ask because tomorrow is Saturday, is non-working, so that is why I just wanted to ask. Can start at the same time as well. Tomorrow probably will go a bit longer, maybe
So,
half hours.
Arpan, whenever you are driving this course, so whenever you feel comfortable and you think that that would be a good time for you to extend. So, yeah,
I
that
mean,
this is
I
my
can.
viewpoint.
I always want to do my things at the morning. So I mean, but I know that many people, like many of you might be working, and you probably have a habit of maybe sleeping in the day. So I can like tomorrow I have nothing to like normally why I keep it at 7:30 because I start trading at 9:15.
Mhm. Yeah.
That is the reason I keep it at 7:30, so that 7:30 to 9 I have the time, and then from 10 a.m. my official work starts. But tomorrow I do not have anything like that, so I can accommodate. So that's why if I have to, say, then I'll say 7:30. But that's, I mean, that is. I just wanted to ask, what is your preference?
I am fine with the timing, but for tomorrow, if possible, because I understand that the class will be stayed a bit longer. So if the class can start at 8 instead of 7:30, it can be 8. Because I have some work like in the
But then,
morning.
I mean that is, you don't have to force you. That's why I was asking. Instead of 8, we can also start it at 12.
No,
That you
actually, I'm fine with 8 because I have a dog that I need to take out.
Okay.
So that is the only reason. So I'll manage that like that.
Acha, let me ask person by person. Prashant, you are comfortable with 7:30?
And anytime, sir, anytime,
Anytime, anytime.
anytime.
Prashant,
20%.
Prashant is like it depends on us. Partho is saying 8. Then Subhojit, what is your preferred time? And do not be like, just because everyone is saying 7:38, do not say 7:38. If you prefer 1 p.m., then you can say 1 p.m., right? But that is the reason I'm asking.
Okay, so Arpan, the point is, I come back from office around at night by 11. So
Okay.
my timing is 1 to 10.
Okay.
So then I have to watch the video. So like I sleep around 2:30, and I have to wake up by 7:30 and start the class. So if you can go bit late, it would be
But what would
convenient
be
for
your
me.
preference? So I don't want the entire story. Just, yeah,
Maybe around 9 or 9:30 would be good
9 or
for just
9:30.
one day. Yes, yes.
And Varsha, what is your preference? Hello?
Every time, and I think if we start
Varsha,
early,
I
we
can't
will
hear
able
you.
to.
Oh,
Okay.
something is wrong with Varsha's microphone. Can you guys hear Varsha?
No,
No. Okay.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, your voice is very low. Like, I don't know if that is the way you usually speak.
Okay. I'm okay with any time, but I believe that if we start early, we will be able to cover more things. So that was the
yeah,
only.
yeah, that's a
So
good point.
let us do one thing. Let us start at, I mean, considering everything. I think let us start at maybe 9:30 or 9. Let us start at 9, and we can go till 11:30 to 12, because then Partho can walk his dog and Sujit will get some rest, because all of us are working very hard on the working days, and weekends are for that. That is the reason I did not want to keep this on the Saturday also, but I had a very bad throat on Monday, so I was not able to do this. So I don't want to take time in the weekend. Usually that is not my preference. But unfortunately, this happened like that. Anyway, so I think we can start from 9 a.m., right? And we'll go till, maybe, I think depends on what we are going to cover, but we will go till 11:30, right? Because I think more than that, we do not have the attention span as well. And these are very difficult concepts, so it's get very, very tiring. Okay, so we'll start tomorrow at 9, and we'll go till, let us assume that right now we are going to go till 11, but it might get stretched to 11:30. So by 11:30 we'll be done. So I think it's a long video, so I think it will take another 2 3 hours to get uploaded. So by 3 p.m., 3:30, you should be able to see the video, and then you can use your weekend as per your wishes. And yeah, and just take break on the weekend. Do not, if you are working or studying very hard, to take some time off as well. That will help you recharge. At least I do that. Anyways, let us come back to this. So I believe that there is no further question. So, there are a couple of things that we have to cover, and we left yesterday. And then hopefully today we'll be able to finish this, kind of this roll forward of the GMM. That is important. And then tomorrow, I think if we can do the VA, VFA, and PA, I think that will be good. So let us see. And PA is very simple. PA is not difficult. It's the VFA that is the difficult portion. But once again, once GMM is finished, VFA is kind of derived out of that. slightly different because there is no concept of locked-in rate there, and there we will have to roll for the reserve as well, right? And tomorrow I want to give a home task. Can anyone like create an example of reserve roll forward, like just an example of reserve roll forward, similar to what I have shown here. Like what are the components that goes in reserve, and then you roll forward opening balance, closing balance, and how you get the the steps in between, like premium and expense and benefits. Yeah, so all of those. Anyone interested? I know Subhajit can't do it because based on the timing.
But I can try,
You can try.
Arpan. Yeah.
Okay, Subhajit, so then it's up to you. It's okay if you do not get it correctly. There is no absolutely no harm, right? So just try. Trying is more important, especially
Yeah.
the fact that you took the, kind of took the initiative that makes you stand apart from the herd. So that is very, very important. Okay, so let us come back here. So now we are going to understand how this acquisition cash flow works. Yeah, sorry, someone was saying something. Okay. Acquisition cash flow works, how this acquisition cash flow works. So acquisition cash flow means your acquisition expense, right? I mentioned that in PNL. So this is this 258750. So that cash flow is coming here, but instead of 258 whatever number, the different number is coming. So you have to understand how this acquisition cash flow works and why this is kind of calculated in that manner. So the reason now in this case, acquisition cash flow is basically the expense that you incurred to get the business, right? So basically, this expense you are incurring to actually provide the service for the next whatever number of years, right? So that is how in IFRS 17 service concept we are going to consider it like that. But because you are using that or because you are using that expense to give the service for the remaining years, there is a there is a logic that this should be spread over the remaining years, because if you just kind of enter the entire thing in the first year, then the first year profit will take a big hit, right? So if you put the entire thing in the first year profit might take a big hit. The first year you might have to incur, although that is actually the case, you have actually incurred the expense in the first year, but in the first year actually speaking, although the expense has been incurred at that point of time only, but while showing, you want to show that in the first year you only, the based on the service concept, you only consider that amount of expense that has been kind of, responsible for the first year service. And next year you are going to incur the next year, some portion of the acquisition expense that is left, which is similar concept to the CSM, kind of CSM roll forward. But in this case, we that is an inherent assumption that because it is an expense, it is not going to incur any interest. So there is no such concept as acquisition expense roll forward, because that we have in IFRS 17 is assumed that it is not going to incur any interest. And you have already, because we already know that we have incurred it in the past, there is no point in increasing the expense. And this concept is also related to US GAAP deferred acquisition cost, which means that, and which was basically a way to kind of increase the profit in the first year, similar to what IFRS 17 is doing. It is increasing the profit in the first year and also reducing the profit in the remaining year. So in GAAP, suppose you uh, have expense of say, let me say 300, right? And this expense, and you have, this expense has been incurred to capture a policy which is of 3-year duration. So earlier, what used to happen, like in IFRS 4, what used to happen, this entire 300 would be, kind of considered in the first year. And because this entire 300 is considered in the first year, that leads to new business strain. Recently I released a video on new business strain in my channel. If you have seen that, so new business strain is equal to your time zero reserve, right? Time zero reserve, and along with that, you have the initial expense, right? So this initial expense is what we are considering here, and the something that will be subtracted from this is the premium, right? So this is your time zero strain or new business strain. So time zero reserve on prudent basis will be very high. Initial expense, obviously you can see it's quite high, 300, and then premium would be very, very low as compared to these two. And because of that reason, there is a new business stream. Now, what US GAAP has done, or what the concept of deferred acquisition cost is, you are going to defer this acquisition cost so that in account statement it will give you profit. So once again, they are trying, what they have tried to do at that point of time is also to show profit or lower strain in the initial years or in the first year, because that makes it more comparable with the other business, right? So that is the very point of IFRS 17, that when you sell a product, you should not incur strain. So instead of having, 300 here and this is 300, so it has to be spread over 3 years. So this is a simple concept of 300 divided by 3, right? So it has to be spread over 3 years. It has to be, it cannot be more than 3. It can be 3, or it can be 2, or it can be 1, but it cannot be more than 3. You cannot spread it more than the duration of the product. So I don't know if right now it is part of the syllabus, but earlier I think in CP1 it was part of the syllabus. So this is the concept of deferred acquisition cost. Whatever cost you are having, you are going to defer it, right? Now IFRS 17 is kind of drawing from the same concept and also using that service concept, saying that whatever service you are providing in the first year, the acquisition expense of only that proportion has to be recognized in the first year. But once again, this is an acquisition expense, which has already been incurred before the year one. Like this has been incurred in the previous year. So in this year, the acquisition expense will not impact your P&L. So whenever you are talking about acquisition expense in IFRS 17, that is not going to impact your P&L. However, you need to show that because it is based on service concept. So basically, it once again shows that you have, kind of use this expense to capture the revenue. So because of that service concept, it comes here in the insurance service revenue. It also goes in the actual section, which is the insurance service expense. And overall, it has a nullifying impact. It has no impact at all. And in all the P&L statement, you see that. But you have to show that. Right? So that is the because of the service concepts, and because it is also going to be amortized like CSM, like or the entire portion would not be recognized. So it is also going to go through that amortization process. So in this case, I have used a different amortization process, and I have used the same death benefit. Once again, service concept, same benefit. But if you see that in this case here, what I have done is I have taken this one, 79, right, which is the process, which is the first year death benefit. And then I have divided it by the sum. So for the first year, it should be same. So 26.60 here also it will come out to be 26.60, just to show you that this can be different, right? Once again, it can be same as well. The CSM amortization and the acquisition expense amortization can follow same percentage as well, but there is no fixed rule. So you can use your own rule. The only thing is that whenever you have whatever you are doing in the first year, you need to maintain that same thing in the second year as well. But in the next year, what I've done is I've taken the sum of these two and I've divided it by total. Right? And in the third year, I've taken the sum of this three and divided by the total. If you consider the CSM amortization, it was the first year and then we have divided by the total. Then it was the second year and divided by total from that point of time, right? So this is also an amortization, where I believe that whatever service is present at the end of the year, that would be considered. And this is also an, kind of an amortization. Right? So there is a chat in the window. Okay, Varsha is also going to try, I believe, the reserve growth board. So just wanted to show you that even for CSM amortization, you can also use that. So it depends on whatever approach you want to take. But the moral of the story is at the end, it should be 100%, like 100% of the acquisition expense should be recognized with what you have thought at the start. And that entire 100% should be exhausted. So that is something that has to be borne in mind. And then you can use the service concept in any way, right? Now, technically speaking, these two should not contradict. This in this manner and the acquisition expense in a different manner, this two should not contradict. Here, just for an example purpose, I have given you this example so that I can show you that both approaches are possible. But if you are following, this approach, the service concept, the way I have done here, so then you should not follow that cumulative service concept here, right? So, but for our purpose, I've just told this to you, but for our purpose, we can ignore that these are not contradictory, but these are like different. And how can we recognize that? But it's just that whatever this acquisition expense number is, 26%, that is being multiplied with this number, which is 258750, and then we are getting this number, uh 68826, right? So if we want to see that, this number, right, this number is being multiplied with D23 to get you that number. Okay, any question, anyone?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
If we show the acquisition expense like this, the cumulative the concept.
Hmm.
So when we would be showing for the next year,
Hmm.
so are we not over estimate or double counting this number? Because if we because that the next year I think it is around 40, so 40%. So 40% of this the actual expense. So when we have already 40 number
50%,
is
almost 50%.
yeah 50%. So if we show this 50%, so already we have recognized 27% of that. So if we in the next year P&L, if we show 50%, so when we have already shown 27% previous year, so are we not double counting for next year, next year?
Yeah, you can say that in that manner, but I mean, once again, acquisition expense would not impact your P&L in any way.
Okay.
So
Okay,
I
it
mean,
is double. It is negating.
yeah. So what your interpretation in that case would be that till in the second year you have incurred this much of expense to give the service, because in the
Okay.
second year also you have given the service of the first year and also the second year, right? Or you can kind of take the difference between these two, this and this. The difference between these two can also be shown in the second year, that for the second year this is the kind of this is the acquisition expense. But once again, it is not going to impact your P&L in any way, right? So that is where whatever number you put, that does not matter for acquisition expense. But at the end of it, what matters is at the end of it, your entire acquisition expense should have been exhausted. Like the first year you have recognized some portion, next year you have recognized some another, some another other portion. And when you reach the end of the fifth year, that entire portion should be the entire acquisition, this entire 25 whatever 258750, that entire 258750 should be exhausted, right? So when you if you do a sum of all the P&Ls after reaching the end of the 5 years, so that should come out to be that 258750, because in this case we are not considering any kind of interest. So that is what is important, and you can represent it in whatever manner. Just you have to be consistent in the service approach.
Yes. One and then the follow-up is not a question, that is just a reconfirmation about my understanding that the treatment of the CSM release and the acquisition expense would be in context of the contract of IFRS 17 would be same, right?
Right. I mean,
If we
the
are showing
percentage.
it in
Yeah.
the acquisition expense in the cumulative manner, then we need to show the CSM release in a cumulative manner as well.
Right. So there is no fixed rule about that.
Okay.
That is why it is principle based, right? I can also show this, but it is difficult for me to justify to an auditor saying that why this has been done in this manner and this has been. It will just throw unnecessary question, right? So that is why no company would do that. If they are releasing CSM in this manner, then they will also be releasing the acquisition expense in the similar manner, right? But there
I
is
got
no
it.
hard and fast rule about it.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay, any further question on acquisition expense? Seems like easy.
Just one
Yes, so-
question.
Yes, Varsha.
Do we expect any experience adjustment of the future service for
Acquisition expense, you cannot expense it. Acquisition expense is already incurred before, no? So how can you
no, like for new contracts or upcoming contracts? Because in the standard, I remember it was mentioned for expenses A by B, for expenses also we do. insurance cash flow, acquisition cash flows.
Acquisition expense, I mean, this is already, see, this is already an incurred expense. So whatever is your actual, before you come here, before you come, because you are preparing the uh, the P&L statement at the end of year one, right? Because that is, it is for that fuel. So you already know the expense that you have incurred in that time period.
But
So
I've seen it adjusting it versus year of expense as well, and also I've studied in the standards, so I was thinking how
that
like it.
some other, I mean, that might, if even
Okay,
if there
okay.
is a change in
So maybe some renewal expense or change
yeah,
in
so that
expense.
that should
Yeah.
come here. I mean, if it's a change in
Okay.
expense,
Mhm.
that should
Mhm.
come, that should impact your reserve, right? And that should come here. But acquisition expense, first of all, it do not impact the P&L. And for acquisition expense, you already have that the
Already
actual,
incurred and
yeah,
yeah,
you
so it's
already have the
only
actual number. You
causation.
need not, there is no need for you to have an expected number. You already know what is the number at that point of time.
Mhm.
Because it's
So
not an
this is
assumption. It was
I'm starting as a part of cash flow. So I'm not experience adjustment as a part of cash flow expense, not as a part of reserves. So I'm just thinking in that
I
way, do
mean,
we
see,
have any?
experience, the very concept of experience adjustment arises when something is expected and then something changes. So that is where you say that your experience has changed. So you need to adjust your experience. But in this case, there was no concept of expected number because you can immediately start with the actual number, right? Unless like in if
Mm.
you when we used to calculate the VNB earlier. So in VNB calculation, like in this case the CSM calculation, there you can say that you might have some. So there was a concept of acquisition expense, VNB with acquisition expense, then VNB with actual acquisition expense. So there are multiple acquisition expense because when you are planning for a product, in that case, at that point, and you are selling the product at the point of sale, there might be two expectation of acquisition expense because you do not know what the acquisition expense you have incurred at that point of time because you might incur more acquisition expense, but that is at t equal to 0. This we are standing at t equal to 1. So at t equal to 0, you may not have the information, but t equal to 1, you should have the information. Otherwise, your finance, admin system is not working properly. So concept of experience adjustment should not arise here in this case because there is, I mean, you already have
But
the actual
standard paragraph B96 talks about it as well. So I
standard.
was just
Which one?
wondering. For a standard B96 paragraph talks about the experience
IFRS standard
adjustments.
B96. Now
Yeah.
that's okay. I'll check that and come back to you. Okay?
Yeah.
If that is, if something is there. So if
Yeah,
IFRS,
I was just thinking like whether it is related to this because it is related to CSM roll forward, but
if it is
if it
related
is
to
not, yeah.
see, acquisition expense has nothing to do with CSM, right? So once again, see, acquisition expense happen before t equal to 0. So that is why it is called acquisition expense. You are incurring
Yeah,
that
right,
expense before
right.
the policy. So CSM is future profit, which we start after t equal to 0. So acquisition expense cannot, if you logically think about that as
But there could be change in the cash flow, right? Earlier, uh, I'm just thinking like
well.
there
The
could be
acquisition expense is
additional.
not part of your reserve, right?
Mhm.
Acquisition expense
Yeah.
cannot be part of your reserve because it is incurred before the time period. So I already shown you that the profit represent your reserve represent the profit. Reserve would be kind of holding the profit, the basic equation. So in
Yes,
that
yes.
case, acquisition expense should not kind of come into picture. It's just maybe it is just relevant at t equal to 0, but after t equal to 0, it is not relevant. So whenever CSM or reserve you are talking about, so it is we usually mean at t equal to 0 plus like one, and at that point of time there is no acquisition expense. So, but still I'll check B96 whatever you have mentioned. But I mean, as far as I know, acquisition till this point of time, acquisition expense is the actual number, and it should be kind of amortized as such. So it should not be like there should not be any expected minus actual unless some company has maybe some company has also done that as well. So it then I mean, they have complicated that stuff, and it depends on where they want to take the difference. Right. So in that, because acquisition is clearly stated in PNL, IFRS 17 that acquisition expense will not impact your PNL. So if it is actual minus expected because of the experience adjustment, where are they going to take the impact? Because it is going to take it is going to hit the P&L. If they have some expectation, that would come here. If them some actual number that would come here in this case. So then there would be an impact, which is once again, which IFRS 17 will not allow you to have that impact.
Mm.
Okay, I'll check if there is something there.
One more question I have. So, we are seeing that CSM is for future service, and we are considering all the BEL and RA because we have certain disclosures in IFRS 17 where we segregate past, current, and future service for the components. Then how, like, and for the P&L, we take past and current service, right? The actual and expected values.
Right, you can say.
Okay, then I was just
I mean,
thinking.
yeah, for PNL, we take the value for that period, right? PNL is always a
Right.
period. So for that period, whatever value is relevant, we take that value. And yeah, and there are, like the change in the
So in
result.
case of expected release of expected incurred claims and other insurance service expenses where it is 1.5 lakhs, if actual and expected are different, then this should be one day one uh, 1.5 lakhs only, but actual will change, right?
Right,
Because
actual will change, and yeah,
expected we are
actual.
taking from cash flows only.
Right, right. So actual will change here. So this might be 150, this can be 140. The difference would flow into the insurance service result here. So this would change. This is your expected number, and this is your actual number. It can be different. In this case, our expected is equal to actual. So that is
Yes.
where the difference would
I
come.
just wanted to understand an example what should change in reality for the actuals.
Yeah, I think we have in the next remaining section we have assumptions where the thing changes, right?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so then I think we can move to the next topic. There is no further question. Next section. Okay, so in the next section. Okay, so now earlier the base case what we have just seen is where expected is equal to actual. Now we are still see we are still in t equal to 1, right? We are not moved into any other year. We are still in t equal to 1. Now these are different scenarios that we are going to capture, right? So now we are saying that for some reason, I don't know whatever reason, for some reason our the number of deaths in year 2 is more than expected. Like the number of deaths earlier we were assuming that there is only one death. Now we are saying that there are two deaths in year 2, right? However, like we are not going to roll forward year 2. We are only going to roll forward year 1. Like, or we are only going to see the PNL of year 1. So it's not that we have moved into year 2, right? So if we are going to do that year 2, PNL, then like Varsha was saying, instead of 1,50,000, right, it would be double. Maybe it will be 2,50,000, right? The expense will probably would not change, but the death benefit will change. So 2,50,000 will happen. But in this case, that is not the picture. It is what it is showing is your assumption has changed, right? There is a change in your mortality assumptions. Earlier it was one death. Now there is the assumption has changed to two deaths, right? So now we have to understand how the impact will flow, from where the impact will flow, whether it will flow through CSM or whether it will flow through PNL, that we have to kind of understand, right? So that is very important for us as an actuary to understand from where this impact will, kind of where this impact will be captured for this change in assumption. So these are the expected cash flows that will not change. We have already seen this expected cash flow. What will change would be so I'm calling this actual cash flows, but technically speaking, these are assumption change cash flows, but not actual, but just writing actual makes sense because we have assumed one death, now it has become two deaths. So that's why I'm calling it actual cash flow. Now, in this case, you can clearly see the difference. The number of policies at the year end, this is 66 and here it is 65, right? So this has been highlighted as well. So that is where, kind of things are changing. So obviously the premium will change because less people are now paying the premium. The commission will also change, right? And similarly, your expense, which was again dependent on the number of policies or premium, that has changed. and your death outgo has increased from 1 lakh to 2 lakh, right? So your death outgo has increased because two people have died, and remaining calculations remain the same, right? So in this case, earlier the present value of future profit, which was the bill, was coming out to be 57,300. In this case, it has increased a lot, right? This number is lot smaller as compared to this number. Remember, these are negative numbers, right? So 1899 is a lot higher as compared to 57,300, right? So you can see what one extra death can do, and you can see that the reserve has tremendously increased from 157,300 to 1899. The reserve has increased a lot. And obviously, because the reserve has, kind of in this case, although in absolute terms, the reserve has, kind of become smaller, but it just means that reserve has become more prudent, right? Because these are in negative terms. Now, this is where, because we have used a simplified assumption, this will probably not make sense intuitively, because if your reserve has increased, your risk adjustment should also increase. The risk has increased, right? But because we have used a simplified assumption, we have not used the cost of capital approach. We have just used a percentage of reserve. So because of that, this would probably not make that sense. This number would not make that sense, and that's why I just call it out. So now it has become 95. Ideally, what it should have be more than this 2865, because your risk has increased somehow, right? So you are probably going to keep more margin. But in this case, because of that simplified assumption, that is not the case. So obviously, this is now your fulfillment cash flow, which is the sum of these two. And obviously, the CSM is the negative of that. So now the CSM has become 1804. So instead of 54,435, which was earlier, just changing one assumption, change the CSM by 1804. So I'll just stop here to see if there is any question, anything that you have not understood. Okay, pretty cool.
Arpan sir, just to confirm, we have changed the assumption that in second year two people are dying, correct?
Right.
Changing the assumption. Oh,
Right.
I missed that word.
Two people are dying. Here 65 and here 66.
Yeah. No
And
worries.
because we have changed the assumption, everything else will change, right? The premium here
Yeah,
will
of
change.
course.
And
The reserve would increase.
yes, because the way we calculate the reserve is recursively, right? So that is why it will start from here, and whenever we see the number difference, this number will change, right? So in that way, everything will change. The number of lives here, right, 65, so that will change. This number will also change because one more people have died. So instead of 55, it will 54. So everything is going to change in the next year onwards, right? Because the number of lives is changing. So everything is
Yeah.
going to change, or every number will be changed, which is I have kind of shown the change here. One can probably also apply some conditional formatting with this table and show that if this any whatever number are changing here. So you will see that every number is kind of changing here. Okay, so now let us move to this one. So CSM at the start of the period, right? So this we are taking from the previous one, right? So 43 is now here. Now we are going to go to the next year, right? Next year roll forward. So here we already have seen this roll forward, which is 58, sorry, 54,435 plus 4,355, that minus 15,638, that will give you 4,3,152. So we are starting from that, right? 4,3,152, that is our starting point, because our assumption has changed, everything has changed. Now in year two, we are going to we are going to have a difference, right? So 4,3,152, this is what we are supposed to get. This should be our opening balance, because nothing has changed in the previous year. Whatever change has happened, that change has happened in this year, in the first year, right? So that how we have to see how that change is kind of being captured. So our expected roll forward would be, the CSM opening balance would remain the same, which is 43152, and that would also be the case for the actual one, because nothing has changed in the previous year. Everything has changed in the next year, right? So in the next year, one more people have died. Then the locked in interest rate would not change. That is why that is called locked in. So it is locked in, and that's why same interest rate is coming. Now the change would that now once again there is a like the number of premiums that we are supposed to get, that is also not changing. However, what has changed is the mortality or the benefit, the reserve assumption. And that we have to capture here. So that has been captured here. To understand this better, we have to go here. So 35, this is captured in J31. J31. Okay. So this is your J31 is this, right? And okay, this is the J31 and this is how it is captured. So expected number is coming from M10, right? So this is the change in assumption. So change in assumption is, we already know that change in assumption is supposed to impact your reserve, right? So what is supposed to change is this M10. So this number has changed, right? This number has changed, and once again, all this number at the start of the year, right? So this, although we are calling this 57,100, is at the start of the year one, right? So we need the number which is at the end of the year. That is what actually reserve means. All this number represent at the start of the year one. So year 57,300 is at the start of the year one. Then 11 lakh is at the start of the year two, which means it is at the end of the year one. Similarly, this number is at the start of the year three, which means it is at the end of the year two. And that is why we have taken that number for the year two, because it is the end of the year reserve, right? So at the end of the year, this would be the reserve that we are supposed to keep, depending on whatever experience we are assuming. And that, because of the change in the assumptions here, because here more people have died and there are less number of people which are, which are available. So that is being captured here, right? That number is being captured here. So M10 is here, and then which is the expected number, and similarly this one, which is the number for after the change in assumption, that is what is captured here, 35,381. That number has been captured here, which is already, because of IFRS 17 standard, that should be the change in estimate of the cash flows relating to the future service. So once again, we have to understand the nature of the change. Nature of the change is in the assumption. Assumption is going to impact your reserve, right? Because the assumption is going to impact your reserve, so that is where this has changed, right? So your assumption has changed, and because the assumption has changed, we are going to say that this is how it is going to change. It is, once again, I'll repeat that this is not an actual scenario. This is a change in your assumptions, right? This is not an actual scenario. Had this been an actual scenario, then there will be some experience adjustment in premium as well, because your number of premium would has changed as well, right? But this is not an actual scenario. This is just a change in your assumptions. Because it is a change in your assumptions, your reserve would get impacted, and that is what we have seen here. So I'll just stop here and see if there is any.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Arpan sir, I just theoretically or the mathematically I've understood it, but I just need to understand the flow of process.
Mhm.
So at time zero, I have written this contract, let's say 100 people, okay.
Right.
Then at time zero, I have the expectation for the next 5 years regarding various variables, be it surrender, all these things.
Right.
But after in the first year, I have my CSM roll forward, which we have seen in second tab. Now, after first year, what I have done, this is something important. I have changed my assumptions for the second year.
Right.
That what I was
Right.
assuming. Now, in the first case, like we can say, just one day before the end of the first year, I have this tabular data where I have the reserve for the next 5 years, correct? But on 1st of January of the next year, of the second year, my assumptions have changed. So again, I have populated this tabular data, and then we are having some reserve. Then we are seeing some expected change, correct?
Right. So basically, 2 points you need to remember, that we are still at the end of the first year. We are not sitting at the end of the year two. Had we been sitting at the end of the year two, then that would have been an experience adjustment. And like I said, then that experience at the premium would also change in that case. But right now, we are still at the end of year T1. So basically, we are still at the end of this worksheet, right? But because of some reason, maybe we are expecting some more deaths, whatever, or we have seen the computers are doing some changes. Because of some reason, we have changed our assumption, right?
So we are
So
on
yes,
1st January of second year, correct?
on
Not
the
on
first January of second year, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
because
we
of
can.
that,
Yeah.
because we have changed our assumptions, so our whatever we were expecting earlier, that has
Okay.
changed now, right? Now, I
Yes.
cannot, like, how can I distinguish between that? So I cannot say expected and this is new expected. I can also say that, but here I've
Mhm.
chosen to call it actual. It is not really actual, which I called out at that point of like initially, right? So this
Yes.
is like expected, comparison between expected and new expected, right?
Improved expected. Yeah.
Improved expected. Yeah, you can say that, right? So
Yeah.
now, because of that, because we are still standing at the end of year one, now we are going
Yes.
to revise our expectation, right?
Yes.
So when we are revising our expectation, this is what we are getting. And that is what, because it's a change in assumption, not in experience, right? Because it's a change in assumption, now we are seeing the change. First change that is coming is in the reserve, right? Because number of lives has changed. So obviously the reserve would
Yes.
change,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that is being captured here.
Okay. So, and now our train will go to 31st December of second year, correct? Like just to have
Right,
that flow.
right,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah. Any further question?
Yep. No, good.
No, no, not from you, but from others, maybe. Okay. So I think everyone understood that. The next one, right? The next one is coming in investment component, right? Now, in order to understand that, like I also mentioned in the, I here also have written para B96. So, Barsha, you have mentioned B96, I think it's related to risk adjustment in some manner, but I don't remember. But when I was creating this example, I mentioned B96. You also mentioned about B96, right, Varsha? Varsha?
Yes, yes.
So B96 should be related to risk adjustment. But anyways, I'll come back to that. Anyways, okay. Okay. So in order to understand investment component, can someone tell me how surrender profit is calculated? Because I have kind of mentioned in that yesterday's email to study the concept of surrender profit.
Yeah. So basically, the profit from the process of surrender depends upon, like as far as I know, depends upon the asset share we have.
Hmm.
Provided the asset share is greater than the surrender profit, it's good for us.
Hmm.
And because we are going to make the profit out there, which can be distributed with other shareholders or the policy holders.
Hmm.
So it profit depends upon regulations and everything. Just from the theoretical point of view,
Hmm.
it depends upon your asset share, which is your accumulated value of money in minus accumulated value of money out. Yeah.
Asset share, and then so basically what you are saying, you surrender profit. What is the definition of surrender profit then for as per you?
So asset share minus the amount I'm giving for the
For the surrender.
surrender. Yeah.
Asset share minus the amount you are giving for surrender. Okay. So that is the profit or loss, maybe at that point of time. When the
Yeah.
surrender happens, that is the profit and loss that you are considering. Now, is that complete answer, or is there anyone want to add anything to that, or maybe deduct anything to
Yes,
that?
so we have
Yes.
to also consider
Sorry,
change
Varsha,
in
you
the.
are not audible once again.
Okay, I'm saying we have also, we need to also consider the PVFP minus the PV of cash flows, that is the release of assumptions, change in assumptions
You
as a
guys,
part
you
of
guys can
surrender.
hear Varsha. I can hear her, but very slowly. PV of Varsha, you need to explain. Like first you explain the reason, and then you can give the formula, obviously. But can you just and speak bit loudly, because something is wrong with your microphone.
Okay. Okay. So I'm saying release of margins will be also considered as a
Release
part
of
of surrender.
release of margins would also be considered. Like, can you explain this like intuitively for us to understand? Release of margin.
Like change in the surrender assumptions.
Change in the surrender assumptions. Okay. Change.
Assumptions, I mean experience. Yeah, the actual versus expected.
Act, once again, actual versus expected.
The difference between asset share and the surrender value paid plus the change in experience.
Yeah, okay. So asset share and surrender value paid has already been mentioned by Prashant. So that component is gone. Now you are saying
Right.
that there is another component which is what? Change in experience.
Yes.
But I mean, surrender has already happened. So how the experience will change after surrender, because the policy is not in force, right?
Okay.
Is
I
I
someone?
guess
just
he
try to
meant to
explain
say
better. Yeah.
basically we expected 10 people to surrender and 11 have surrendered or 9 have surrendered.
Hmm.
And that too also, let's suppose a 10-year product, and at 9th year we expect like 10 people to surrender and 11 have surrendered. So in that case, and we have a very high asset share. So I
Okay.
think she means that like more than expected have surrender, and there may be some kind of a release of uh, what you can say reserve for that had they not surrendered, had
Okay.
the
So
11th person not surrendered.
So basically, what you are saying is like surrender profit now for a certain, like I was not talking about the portfolio level, kind of surrender. I was just talking about a single policy surrender profit,
Okay.
which right. So now then in single policy surrender
Okay.
profit, uh, the how the experience adjustment comes into picture is not clear to me, at least like based on what Barsha explained. But I can understand what she's probably trying to say. So first, there are two components in surrender. Oh, someone else was also saying something, right? I think Subhaji.
Yes,
Yes,
Salman. So
yes.
I just wanted to say that maybe surrender profit, I was searching that about that. So maybe is that so for a particular policy,
Hmm,
so there will be some reserve
hmm,
kept
hmm,
aside.
hmm.
So when the one policy gets surrendered, so in
Right.
that case, what happens? We don't have to pay from the reserve.
Hmm,
So from the asset share, we pay that surrender amount.
hmm,
So which is way less than that reserve amount. So whatever the amount we are paying,
hmm.
so difference between that reserve and that asset share or the surrender amount. So that is the actually surrender profit. Am I correct?
Uh, no, I mean, I
Okay.
think you uh, confuse two concepts. See, and
Okay.
whenever surrender happens, there are two components. One is called the asset share, right? And then there is the surrender value, like Prashant mentioned. So there are two sources of profit. This is the profit that we can, or loss that we can actually see. Someone has again messaged, I believe. Varsha has messaged. Varsha has messaged the B96, I believe. Anyways, we can see that later. Okay. Okay. So AS minus is V, right? So this is your this will not work like that, right? So this is the first source of profit. This is the first component. So whatever you have earned in the asset share for that policy, and whatever amount you have paid as surrender value, right? So something you have earned in the asset share and something you have paid as a surrender value. So difference between that will immediately give you profit, right? So that is the first source of profit, right? And obviously, like Suvajit was mentioning, so whatever reserve you have hold for this, that reserve would also get released for that policy because the policy is not in force, right? But when you are releasing that reserve, that is a positive source of that is a positive inflow for you. But you are also letting go of the future profit because you are not supposed to release reserve at that point of time. Contractually, you should have hold this reserve at later point of time. So maybe if the surrender happen at a very early stage, then you are letting go of the investment profit. So there is another, and also that whenever you are priced for surrender or whenever you might be keeping the reserve, right? So that reserve might be kept at a different basis. It might be very prudent basis. But when you are maybe at a future point of time, when if your experience is favorable, so then that would also the difference between that, right? So you have a reserve at that point of time, which might be on a different basis, and your experience might have emerged to be a different basis, right? It might be loss as well. So your reserve on surrender basis, this is what I'm say, reserve at surrender basis, and then is your reserve at experience basis, right? So this is called uncapitalized profit. This is the profit that you are not able to capitalize on, right? This is like hypothetical. If you if your contract had stayed the entire time period, then this is the profit or loss that you are going to make, right? So that overall surrender profit is given by AS minus SV plus this reserve surrender basis, right? And minus reserve experience basis. I think Varsha was trying to say the same thing, where she was saying the margins should be released, right? But this is what it actually means. That what at whatever assumptions you have used to calculate the reserve, so that assumption, from that assumption, and whatever you are actually going to get, if the policy survives till the end of the period, the difference between these two reserve would also be released, right? That difference. So this so at the point of surrender, you cannot consider your entire reserve to be released, because that will inflate your profit. Because whenever a surrender is happening, and if the entire reserve get released, so it is a positive thing for the company. So it will be like always, like if surrender happens, then we are getting some positive cash flow. That is not the case, right? Because you might be losing too much on the future profit, especially when the surrender is happening at the start. So that is not the right way to look at it, because this release of reserve is not a supposed or suggested or expected release of reserve. This release of reserve is a forced release of reserve, right? You are not supposed to have that release of reserve at that point of time. So this means that you are also losing out on something, which is this experience basis. So reserve on surrender basis minus the reserve on experience basis plus the asset share minus the surrender value. This constitutes the profit at the point of surrender. So if you just say this, right, this is easier to visualize, because you can already say that this policy has accumulated 150 rupees. I am paying only say 125. So 25 is my profit. It is easier to visualize, right? I think anyone can say that. But this one was tough to visualize or tough to explain, right? Like I think Varsha already know the concept, but she mentioned something else, or so she was not able to explain. So here we have to understand what and why the release of reserve is not a positive thing for the company, because you are letting go of profit, which you might earn in the future, right? So that is called the uncapitalized profit. I'll just stop here to see if there are questions here. Good, no question. Everyone understood. Great. Now we have to understand how the investment component is calculated. Now, in order to understand that, we are going to go to that same table. That I think this is where it is, right? So in order to understand that, we have to understand multiple things here. Right? So initially in the first year, and because here we are considering the surrender value of the investment component, right? In the year one, there we are not giving any surrender value, right? So there is only one insurance component. Right here we have tried to segregate between insurance component and investment component. Once again, this is an assumption. Technically speaking, we cannot do that. I mean, we cannot identify the source of insurance component, investment component. That is why these are, kind of captured in IFRS 17, right? Otherwise, we could have captured that in IFRS 9 if this is so easy to do so. So we are assuming we're doing some logical mathematical reasoning to understand how the insurance component and investment component works, so that we can kind of segregate for the purpose of IFRS 17. But once again, it's almost impossible to say that which portion of the premium is going to create insurance component and which portion is going to create investment component. So it is a non-distinct investment component, but here we have made some effort to distinguish it so that we can actually capture that for the purpose of IFRS 17. Once again, these two concepts are slightly contradictory to each other, right? But this is how IFRS 17 has been created. They wanted to separate the impact for insurance profit and also the impact of the investment related things. So that's what we have to kind of deal with, and we have to familiarize ourselves with all of this. So in the next year, the surrender value that was paid was 20,000. Investment component, obviously, same as the surrender value. So that is also 20,000. And from the entire profit, right? So if the surrender happens in the next year, right? So that this 20,000 is considered as the investment component. So the remaining component, that the 80,000 would be considered as the insurance component, because the insurance company will think in this manner that if the policy holder surrenders the policy, then anyways we have to give 20,000 at this year. So that is our investment component. However, if the policyholder dies, then we have to give 1 lakh. But anyways, we have to pay 20,000. Now, definition of investment component as per the standard is the payment that the insurance company make when the insured event has not occurred. So in this case, when the insured event has not occurred, the insurance company has already is going to make this payment of 20,000, right? So whatever left is the insurance component. Now, once again, this is a like we are mathematically trying to, or using our actual knowledge, or whatever, where some logical standpoint we are kind of trying to distinguish between that, and that is the requirement of IFRS 17. But it is very difficult to identify things like that. Someone else might have a different thought process, and that might give rise to a different sort of insurance component. But this is how we are going to do that. And in IFRS 17 is very important that we distinguish between investment component and insurance component, although we know that it is a non-distinct, kind of non-distinct investment component. That is why it is kind of measured in IFRS 17 and not 9. And that is where the contradictory claim of IFRS 17 comes into picture. One way we are saying it is non-distinct, and in the other way we are saying that we have to distinguish as well to capture the impact. So that is where it is working out. Next year, we are making a payment of 42,000, and obviously 42,000 minus 1 lakh, because we are saying insurance company saying any case we have to pay 42,000. So the remaining that is left, that is our insurance component, right? So that is the way we are segregating between investment component and insurance component. So I'll just stop here to see if there is any question here. Okay. No question. Okay. So now we are coming to this, that how the actual calculation moves, and here you will see another, sort of contradiction, or another sort of difficult concept to understand. So number of deaths which is expected for this year too, right? So that is in this case, this is number of deaths is 1, and actually what has happened, or the revised assumption what has happened, is number of deaths has increased to 2. So the difference is 1. Number of surrenders has not increased. Number of surrenders has stayed 12, because we have not changed the surrender, right? So the premium that we are supposed to get at the start of the year 2, right, that has not changed, because we are assuming that the death has happened at the end of the year, right? So that is why the premium has not changed, right? So that has also not changed. Now the commission, once again, it is based on premium, and it is also occurring at the start of the year, so it has not changed. Expenses, it is also occurring at the because of the way we have defined it, it is also related to the premium, so it has also not changed, right? Now this would obviously change, and you have already seen that, because the number of lives had changed. So reserve obviously is kept for enforced policy. This is changed. Now how the insurance component has changed. So earlier we are supposed to, and this is this comparison, or this is done for one policy, right? Now here we are going to capture the portfolio level thing. So in this case, earlier we were supposed to make 80,000, consider 80,000 as the insurance component, because only one person was dying. Now two persons are dying, right? So now this is easy to understand. So 80,000 into 2%, right? 80 into 2. So that is 1,60,000. And that is how it is, we are capturing the difference. So just because one person has died, right? One person has died. So that has impacted my insurance component. One more person has died, and that is supposed to happen, right? Because two people has died, so it is supposed to impact my insurance component. So now it is coming out to be 80,000. However, the investment component is also changing, right? And this is very counterintuitive to understand. At least for me, when I was kind of devising this, so it was very counterintuitive for me to understand. Now, how we calculate the insurance component in this case is we take the entire thing, which is death and the surrender. And in this case also, so that comes out to be 1 plus 12, right? Once again, here, why you are using both the death and surrender, because we cannot distinguish. So here we are trying to distinguish. It is a distinct component. In this case, we are saying that we cannot distinguish between the investment component for this entire and the insurance component. The entire for the entire policy, there are one death and there are 12 surrenders. So ideally, it should have been 12 into, there should not be any, like, if you think about that, intuitively, there should not be any change in the, kind of in the investment component, because no person has surrendered in this case, right? So ideally, your investment component should not have changed. But in this case, we cannot distinguish. So because we cannot distinguish, we are saying that the number of deaths and the number of surrenders, right? So we are going to take both of this, and that should be multiplied with this, because the people who have, in this case, the people who have died, they had the death not happened, they could also surrender. So that is the logic here we are using. And we are saying that it is coming out to be 2,60,000. which is basically 20,000 into 13. And in this case, because two people have died, so that in this case it is 14 into 20,000, which is the investment component. And now we are getting 20,000, right? So the investment component has also changed by 20,000. Now this calculation is happening on portfolio level, right? You can understand that this calculation is happening on portfolio level. So what it basically means is the insurance component and investment component are non-distinct. Otherwise, this cannot happen, right? This is impossible. So what it means is insurance component, investment component is non-distinct. At a particular year, the insurance company, suppose at the start of a particular year, insurance company is going to pay, say, 60 as insurance component, like we kind of decided this, and 40 as investment component. So if you change this, so this payment would not change. This payment would always be 100. Right? This payment is always would always be 100. But if you change this to say 70, right? So then this has to change to 30. Otherwise, this payment would change, right? So that cannot change. If you are changing the insurance component, then the investment component has to change, because that's how because somehow we cannot distinguish between these two, and somehow we have to, like, when one thing changes, the benefit of the insurer is not benefit that the insurer has to pay is not going to change. So overall it has to remain 100. So that's what IFRS 17 is calling out. At one point of time it's distinguishing, at one point of time it is not distinguishing, and it is saying that we cannot distinguish. But comfortable you have to be comfortable with this. Right, so once again I stop here and see what are the questions. Okay, good. No questions. Great.
I have a question.
Yes, yes.
So for surrender outgo,
Yeah.
this is the expected outgoing column H, right? So this is not the surrender value calculation. Because I
Under
was just
column
thinking,
H, this this
yeah,
is
89, the projections that we see in the surrender outgo,
this one.
because if we are changing any mortality rate, it should impact our surrender as well when we calculate surrender value, because higher mortality, lower people will surrender value will get affected. But here the assumptions are independent, right? Where we
Right,
see
right. You,
that
yeah, you
only
are talking about
from
selective lapses, like in that manner, or it
yeah,
depends
like
on.
I was, yeah, and decrements are dependent. So I was just thinking, like,
Yes, yes. I
though
have used
number
a
of lives
simplified.
have
Right.
started.
You are right, Varsha. So in real scenario, that would happen, right? But I have used a
Okay.
simplified assumption, right? So I have not considered that. I have considered it independent, and that is the main reason for this is we have considered is independent. So otherwise, we have to
Okay.
assume what happens first, whether the surrender happens first or the death happens first. If the surrender happens first, then surrender first people will surrender, and but then those people cannot die, right? Because those people have already surrendered. So then that will impact your death, right? So the calculation would change. But in this case, we are using a much simplified assumption. That is why we need actual software, right? So here we are using a
Right.
simplified assumption. We are independent. We are
But I think
considering
it is capturing an investment component, so it makes sense that it is different when one
like
deaths and two
how it is
deaths.
capturing
Yeah.
an investment component. Can you explain for all of us?
Yes. So when we are considering the total number of uh deaths or surrenders, so we are assuming when the future assumption is changed to two deaths, so there should be there can be change in the total, but it is again letting the number of lives changed.
No,
I'm
it's
confused now.
no, it's act. I mean, that is not how I've designed this example. So it is
Okay.
basically to show that, like what I mentioned, that investment component, is at one point of time you will say investment component is distinct. At another point of time you will say investment component is not distinct, and that is the reason you are kind of uh, reporting that in IFRS 17. So that is the purpose. But if you can somehow relate it to the dependency of decrements, right? So then that's, but I mean, from
Yeah, I'm
my,
thinking about the answer.
yeah.
Yeah.
But this is I mean, we have to remember that whenever your insurance component changes or whenever your investment
Mm.
component changes, your by
Mm.
default the other component will change. Right? There is no other way.
Yes.
You have to understand that, because that is one component, because both this component are not distinct. If you change one thing, then the other would automatically change. So that overall things would not change. Right. So that's how kind of it is. It will balance each other out.
Okay.
Okay. So that difference in the investment component is also flowing here, right? So that difference in this case, it's a negative thing. So here we are capturing the change in the reserve, right? We are not capturing any change in the premium adjustment because it's same premiums are same because it's happening at the start. And then we are capturing the difference in the the difference in the investment components. I've already given that, explained that, and now change in risk adjustment, right? So obviously because your reserve is changing and the way we have defined the reserve, right? So reserve is also supposed to change. So risk adjustment opening for this was 1181, and then the number of changes related to the future service is 18. So let us see from where this 1181 is coming. So it is coming from N9. Let me highlight that, sorry. N9. Right. So for the first year, sorry, for the second year, this was the risk adjustment. And then changes in the future service, right? Changes in the future service that is coming from Y14. Let us see where is Y14. Oops. Y14. Wait a minute. Okay. So let us understand the calculation here. So this is Y12. Let us go to Y12. Y12 is changes in the the like what I was kind of saying, the changes in the, because now this is a, once again, this is the reason for a using a simplified assumption, right? So we have considered reserve to be based on so if you see this is the risk adjustment, and risk adjustment we have considered this as a percentage of PBCA, right? Ideally that would not be the case, because we have considered this as a percentage of PBCA. So what is happening? The PBCA is changing, right? Because the PBCA is changing, the reserve should also change. So the reserve, the PBCA is changing, and then we are multiplying that, right? Multiplying that change. So Y12 multiplied with that D22. So what is D22 here? So D22 is here. D22 is this one. What is D22? This one, right? So D22, that is the percentage change for this is year 3. Should be okay. Risk adjustment. This is why I've used year 3. It should be year 2. This is year 1. This should be year 2. This is year 3. I think this is a, check this. D96 import Y here plus D22. I think that should be D22 instead of D22. Yeah, this percentage change is for year 3. So it should not be the case. It should be, it should be E22. It should not be 22. So basically my reserve is changing, and I have to change this. Okay. So basically what is happening is my reserve is changing. Because my reserve is changing, the risk adjustment, by the way I have defined it, is based on the reserve. So because of that, this multiplied with the the change percent, the risk adjustment percentage, right? So that should give me the change in the risk adjustment. Right now, you ideally that would not be the case, but I mean, because once again, because of the way we have defined this, so this is,
Hello,
yes,
Arpan.
yes, yeah.
Arpan, that will be E22 or C22, I guess. That is year
That
2.
is, oh, that is C22, right?
Could you
Yes,
please check once?
that should be C22. Yeah, right, right. That should be C22. You're right. Okay. So now here we are doing that, risk adjustment rule for it as well. So 1181, which was our opening at the start, right? So 1181 is at the start of the year. This is the change. which is 35, right? This is a change. And this is the change related to the future service, which is because your bill is related to the future service. So that is what this change is about. Now we have another change which is related to the current service, right? So let us understand this as well. Where is this current service? So E10, where is E10 change in the risk adjustment due to financial risk. So this is directly coming from by taking the subtraction. So this is N9 minus N10. Let us also understand this. N9 minus N10. So basically your reserve is supposed to change, or sorry, not reserve, your risk adjustment is supposed to, this is the release of the risk adjustment, right? So your release of the risk adjustment for the current period for year two, it should be 1181 to 1126 for this current period, like because now we are rolling for the year two based, although we are standing on year one, right? Once again, always remember that we are standing on year one, but we are trying to, kind of capture the year two on expected basis. So the release of the reserve, release of the risk adjustment would be for the current year would be 1126 minus 1181, which is captured here, right? Which is captured here, which is flowing through the PNL basically in this case. But the future release, anything that is related to the future, because CSM represent the future, and the future release is coming from the reserve related changes, because if your reserve changes, because and why your reserve is changing and mortality is changing. So because your mortality is changing or reserve is changing, the way we have defined risk adjustment is it is dependent on the, it is dependent on the reserve. So that is why this change is also happening. So 35.38, this change is related to the future and this change is related to the current, right? So you can understand how complicated this is, but this is how it is, right? So risk adjustment, there are two changes. One change is captured in the current period. Because it is in the current period, it will flow in the P&L. This we have already seen in the previous year as well. This should not be unfamiliar to us. We have seen the change in the risk adjustment here as well, which is the current period, right? So which we have seen that. Now here also we are seeing the difference, which is for the current period, and that is captured in the PNL, because once again PNL is for a particular period, so that is where it is captured. But the future related changes, right, that would be captured in CSM. So you can understand one mortality, how just a change in mortality has changed so many things. The insurance component obviously has changed. The investment component has changed. The reserve, which was supposed to change, has changed. The risk adjustment, because it is dependent on the reserve, it has changed in two places, right? One is the expected change, which is that 55. The remaining is the future change, which is flowing through the CSM. One change, just one change in depth. And that's how I believe IFRS 17 has complicated the life for us. But anyways, I'll stop here, see if there is any question. Okay, cool. So I think that is cool. So other than that, yeah. So other than that, I don't think there is any such changes here. Obviously, the ratio would change a bit, right? Earlier, whatever this was the expected CSM release, but now the release would change, right? So here you can see 30.28, and here this because of this 65, here it has changed a bit, right? 65. So in this 30.37, and in that way it has changed, right? So although it is still the last, obviously would be 100,000, but because of this death, the profit earlier you were supposed to get, or earlier you were supposed to pay 2,97,000 overall, right? Now you have out of those 2,97,000 that you have to pay, you have paid some extra amount. So now that death benefit in force, right? So that has changed a bit, and because of that, your service level or the profit that you are going to recognize in each year, that has also changed a bit. So because of the way we have defined the amortization, everything, and because the number of lives are changing, the change is here, right? The change is here. And because of the change, the remaining things also changes. Because it is 65, it has to be 54, it has to be 48. One more people have died, and everything else changes. The entire service level changes. So that is going to impact your release of CSM, right? So in this case, for the CSM roll forward, you are going to use the expected number, right? We already know that. But here, for the CSM roll forward for the actual case or the revised expectation, we are using a different allocation percentage, which is based on the current number, right? So I think that should be easy to understand. Any question there? Okay, no question.
So Arpan sir, basically we are going to take the revised assumption CSM allocation, and then like we are right now in 1st of January, correct? And we have not
Right.
made any changes for the actual thing happened will going to happen in next 12 months.
Right. So, but I mean, we have changed the assumptions, and you can say like this is like an actual change, but we are still on January 1, right? So we are
Yeah.
still on January. I mean,
And for the
first
case
year.
study base, we are saying that the revised assumption is equal to the actual when we are on 31st December.
A revised assumption is this one, right? So earlier expected was equal to actual, which was the base case. Now this is the scenario that number of deaths in year 2 is one more than expected. So that
So
is what
like
we are doing.
yeah, in the case study we are expecting like in year two we are going to die actually. I mean to say that in the base case it was like actual equal to expected. Now in this case revised expected is equal to actual.
Yes, revised expected. So basically, if everything is was going to happen as per our expectation, then this is the roll forward, right? If everything was supposed to happen like we have assumed in when we have at year 0, I mean at
Yes.
equal to 0. So then this would have been the roll forward, but because something has changed, so now this is the roll forward. This is how
Yes.
it is kind of looking right now. So I have given you a comparison. You need not do this. You can only show this, right? But I mean, just for comparison perspective, this is how it is. Like it starts from the same number, but then it also gets the same interest because it starts from the same number and there is no new business, right? But then after that, everything changes, right? So earlier we are going to recognize 14,109. In this case, we are going to recognize 18,838.
Yes.
So right now we are in this case, like however it has panned out, we are kind of recognizing more profit in this year as compared to the previous year. So in that way, it has changed. Like something has changed because of that change. We are seeing some changes, right? So and that's how it is going to be. Okay, so now we are going to see the PNL, right? So this is the expected change. So CSM recognized for this period. We have already seen that this is coming directly from the expected number, right? So that was that 14109. And now instead of that, we are actually getting 18838. So this has increased. This is a good thing for us right now, right? So this basically means that although the death has happened, that has somehow impacted insurer in positive manner in this way based on this, just on this number. The remaining things might change though. So change in risk adjustment, which is the non-financial risk. This is the expected change. So there is nothing here. And the CSA and the actual change is flowing through not the actual change, the future change is flowing through the CSA. So that would not flow into the PNL. So this change is not impacting the PNL. So the change that is supposed to impact the PNL is the current change, and there is no change there. So that is why 55 and 55, nothing is changing here. This is our expected number, right? So this expected number is not going to change 121475. So earlier we expected this, which is this 121475 is coming from F9 and H32 if we want to see that. So this is the number F9 and H32. So this is the this is the F9 and H32. Right? There was H32, I believe. Did I missed anything? H32. Where is H32? H32. Yeah, this is the number, insurance component. So now, instead of earlier, we did not have any investment component, right? So in the year 1, because there was no surrender benefit. So there is no investment component. So because of that, we have taken 1 lakh because that was the entire insurance component. Now we have the expense. This is the expense. And now this is the insurance component, which is expected, which is coming out to be 80,000. And that we have put here in the expected claims, expected incurred claims and other insurance service. Because this is what we are supposed to pay. Basically, this is what we are supposed to pay, the expense and the insured component. Once again, here we are trying to distinguish, right? So here, this is the number we are expected to pay. And that is also the number we are once again, these are expected number, right? So once we come here, this number would change, right? So in the expectation, there is no change, 121,475, and that is what we should see there. Similarly, the recovery of acquisition expense, that would change. Now here we have used the same, the cash flows, same allocation percentage that I have used in the the first time. So once again, 57,500. This we already understand. Nothing more to explain. The change that is happening in the PNL is here. Like the question that Varsha was asking, can we see a change where maybe where the number of deaths is more? So earlier we are supposed to see 121,475 only, right? Because if everything goes as per expectation, then this should not impact us. But now we are seeing a change which is 201,475, right? And which is expected to change because our insurance component has increased, right? It's from 80,000, it has become 1,60,000. So here we can see the change, right? I leave it to you to kind of understand the calculation. You can see F11, which is that 1,60,000. You can easily see that, and plus the expense. But yeah, so that is how. So this number is changing, and that is where the impact is coming in the P&L. So whenever, and this is also expected, right? Whenever more people are dying, so that should impact your profit and loss of that year, right? So here we can see first impact that is coming. That impact is coming in the CSL. But this impact, if we just take this, kind of difference, this impact is 4,728, right? So this is the positive impact for us. This thing is good for us. But this impact, because it's this one is a negative number, right? Insurance service revenue is negative for the company. So this would also be positive, but in turn that would be negative for the company because this represents the negative section. Right. So sorry, this is negative because the way we have defined this, we have already given it as a negative number, so that's why it is a negative thing. So actually we are gaining 4,728, but we are losing 80,000, right? We are losing 80,000. So actually it is a bad thing for the company. So if someone just see this and they will say, oh, it's a good thing for the company. That's why I mentioned only if you see this, then that is a good thing for the company. But actually we are actually paying out more 80,000 more, which also ties up with the insured component because we actually, one more death has happened and that is why we are paying 80,000 more, right? So we are gaining 4,728, but we are losing 80,000. So overall, it is going to impact our profitability and it is going to impact our P&L, right? So it is impacting our P&L by that extra amount that we are paying, which is supposed to be the case because P&L is for a particular fluid and we are making this extra payment. And also it is impacting our CSL. So whenever these are the questions that you will be getting in interview, right? Not what is written in para B96. Nobody remembers that, right? But the question that will get, if an extra death happens, what will that impact and why it will impact that? So these are the questions that you are going to get in interviews. And if you can answer that question, of course, you are going to get selected, right? Explain that question, not answer, explain. You have to explain it well, right? Like the answer for the surrender benefit, surrender profit, Varsha already knew the answer. I can understand from what she said, but she was not able to explain that. That is not good. You have to explain the answer, right? That means you lack conceptual clarity. If you are not able to explain the answer, so that means you lack conceptual clarity. You have to be very, very conceptually clear, especially in IFRS 17. So this is what it kind of stands out. And then here also in the insurance service result, which is the insurance profit, obviously this is the insurance related change. So the change would flow here. Earlier we are making 14,165 profit. In this case, we have moved into loss just because of this additional payment, right? And obviously in the insurance here, we are not going to see much change, but here 183. So here insurance finance expense here, this also has changed because the number of so we have actually not considered the calculation of this, right? We have straight away moved into this step, this section. Anyways, I think this, let us leave this for now, right? So this is also supposed to change because the way investment component is defined and interest is defined. This is also supposed to change, but let us leave this for now. We can straight away see a change in the insurance service result. Earlier it was 14,165 and now it is 61,107, right? So and it is the negative. Any question here till now? Good. Okay.
Just one question I had.
Yes. Yeah.
So, in the actual and expected for the claims
Right, this
incurred
one.
and
Yeah.
So we can only see the mortality death benefit and expenses. So the impact of the change of the investment component is only flowing in CSM, right? The 20,000.
Right, right. Impact of change in the
Okay.
investment component is flowing to the CSM, and that is how
Okay.
it should be. Uh, the
Okay.
reason is investment component and actual component, the difference, the actual and expected. Like this is what you call the experience adjustment. That by default, IFRS 17 is capturing here, right? So when you are talking about the investment component, there are two components. One is that earned asset share minus the surrender benefit that you have paid. That difference is supposed to be captured here, and the remaining difference is, or remaining portion or section is coming into the is coming from the future, the uncapitalized profit, right? It's the future profit that you are going to get impacted. That is also captured here. So whenever there is a change in the investment component, right? So that entire thing would be captured in the CSM. That will not impact your P&L. That is the second, that is one another scenario that we are going to study. But because that you have asked this question, but whenever death happens, it is going to impact both CSM and P&L, right? But whenever investment component happens, change in investment component happens, it is going to impact your CSM only. It is not going to impact this, because the way
So
IFRS
we are
17 is
saying
structured.
that the surrenders cannot impact my P&L directly, but it can
I mean,
impact in
there would
the
be there would
CSM.
be a portion which is the CSM would obviously change, right? Because of
Yeah,
the
my
change here. So
profitability
that
will be
CSM would
impacted.
flow here. That CSM
Yes,
would flow
yes.
here. And in that way, it will impact a portion, right? But majority of the impact of surrender is captured in the uncapitalized profit, which is captured here, which is the change in the reserve. And also, this portion would be what a portion of this would be kind of flowing here. So yeah, it is impacting your P&L, but through the CSM. Like the entire impact will lie in the CSM, and whatever change will happen in the P&L is because of CSM, not because of anything else. But in death benefit, the impact is also experienced here, right? 121 and 207, 20175. So the impact is here. So that is what we need
And
to understand.
yeah, and also one more thing. I'm
Yes.
just thinking, so this risk adjustment, which is showing separately in P&L, all of it can flow in the CSM as well, right? Like, I can recall something like we had some option to show risk adjustment in entire
I mean, here, if you see this, it is called change in risk adjustment for future
future
service.
service.
CSM is
Okay.
related to future, right? So anything that is related to future service would flow here. But this is related to the current service.
Current,
So
okay.
current would not
So
flow
it is.
into the future. This is the amount of margin you are releasing for that period. And this is the change that is happening because of the change in reserve, right? So obviously your risk adjustment will depend on your reserve. Even if you do that by that cost of the real, approach, the cost of capital approach. So when your reserve changes, that means your risk has changed. Risk adjustment basically means your capacity to take risk. So if your reserve is changing, either your risk has increased, either your reserve has decreased. In risk has increased because your liability has changed. So risk adjustment will definitely change. So the change that is happening for the reserve, or and because reserve represent your future, since we are talking about prospective reserve only. So that will impact your risk adjustment, and that impact will flow in CSM because it captures the future of everything. Whatever is in the current would flow into the P. Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Actually, I was looking into the calculation.
Mhm.
So, just that there's what I see, that the difference between the CSM recognized for service provided between year two expected and year two actual, it is 4728. So that actually, if we add,
Where is 4728? Can you point me?
yeah, 4728, please go to the right. So you have taken the difference in cell AG9.
Okay. Yes, yes, yes.
So that is the difference.
Yeah.
Now, if we actually add that insurance claim and other, so if you take the difference between incurred claim and other insurance insurance service experience, that is 80,000 in cell AG14.
Mhm.
And if you scroll down, please.
Okay.
Uh, and take the difference of insurance service result. So
Insurance service result. Okay.
yeah, if you take the difference and add 80,000 and the insurance the difference, then actually that actually reconcile with 4728 this number. So is
Yeah,
that
that-
is that a mod is that a way to reconcile, or is it because of this just this model?
no. It's that is how it is supposed to be. So insurance service result is the sum of these two sections, right? Insurance service revenue will consist of your expected numbers, and that is captured here. That is the like the insurance service revenue total is given here. Insurance service expense total is given here, and the difference between these two is captured in insurance service result. So obviously, the change that you are seeing here that should reconcile, right? Otherwise,
Okay.
there is no point. So this basically what insurance service result shows is your insurance related profit, which
Right.
is required for GMM. And then the insurance finance income shows your result that is required for the investment or the finance side, right? So that is shown separately here. That is how it is calculated.
So okay, so from the model from the just for the sake of understanding, so these two number actually will reconcile with the number with AG9. So the difference between CSM recognizing service provided.
Yes,
So
it is
this is one.
mathematically it has to reconcile because this the sum of these two number is this number. So if there is change here and here, if you sum that up, that should reconcile here, right?
Okay.
Because it is mathematically it is the sum of these two. Insurance service expense and revenue is that sum is represented in insurance service result. So whatever change is happening here, that is obviously is going to reconcile.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so I think we have run out of time once again. Once again, those are very good questions. So yeah, okay. I think I'll stop here. I hope I actually thought that maybe one thing we can do is see if the surrender one and the course because Varsha has already asked the question, right? So uh, this is number of deaths in year two is one more than expected and future expectation has changed. So I think we can easily see this one because nothing is maybe in the next 1 or 2 minutes because this was the scenario that we have already captured, and this is the scenario where number of death in year two is one more than expected and future expectation has also changed, right? So now we'll see more changes basically, but it's similar to before. So number of deaths here has changed and the future expectation has also changed. So earlier it was 66 and now it has become 65 and the future expectation has also changed. Future expectation is from year three has increased from 1 to 2, right? So earlier it was 55, there was only one death happening. Now that has also changed. So because from year two onwards, everything has changed. Still, we are on at the end of year one, right? So we are only seeing the assumptions, but now I've made it even more complex, right? We made it slightly more complex. So now everything is changing. Earlier there was only one change in year two. Now year two is also changing, and everything else, the assumptions for year three and everything else also has changed, right? But it will. I mean, I think now you get the picture. It is working in the similar manner, so you can easily see this, right? So the CSM has, is starting from 43152, 3452. You already know that, but in this case, it is 43152, 3452. But now here, there will be change in the cash flow for the future, right? How this change is coming? This change is the difference between this 2252,470 and the difference here, which is 2258,465. You can see the change here, right? So this is where the change. This reserve number will change because now your future expectation has also changed, right? So that is why there will be a significant change in the reserve number. So same calculation is being repeated, but it's just slightly complex now. All obviously the this for because we are still in the end of year one and we are kind of and we are changing the assumption. So we are going to do the roll forward from year one to year two only, but we have also changed the assumption for year three, year four, year five, right? So here, because for this particular year, the change in the investment component will be same because that nothing extraordinary has changed in that year, but the remaining assumption has changed, and that remaining assumption change is flowing here because the reserve has changed. The future has changed. So because of the change in the future that we are seeing here, and the investment component will not change because for the current period, the investment component stays same. But this one has changed. So as an actual, candidate for us, it is very important to identify what should change. So in this case, you should be able to identify that investment component will not change, but the change in the best estimate reserve that will change, BEL will change because BEL is changing. The risk adjustment would also change, right? In this case here, obviously your risk, CSM recognize that will change. RA that will not change, right? Because it's the current service has not changed. This will not change, but once again, and the insurance component because it is for the particular year. This is not impacting your assumption, right? So for the PNL basis, there is no change. The PNL has not changed. PNL has stayed the same. The change has impacted your CSM because it relates to the future, because you have made the assumption changes in the future, right? We have made the assumption change in the future, and that is why nothing is changing there. Any question, anyone here? Yeah, I think it's easy to understand, right? Once you have, kind of seen the other portion, right? Okay, so that's it for today. Yes.
Just a request,
Yeah.
would it be possible to save this Excel file because there is one update in that. So
Yeah.
can
Yes. I'll also check maybe the calculation for the risk adjustment for other years as well. And for maybe here as well, if there is a, kind of error, I am going to correct that. I'm saying it to you.
is there's a typographical error, that's fine, but just for this.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
So one more question, maybe we can discuss further tomorrow. So the risk adjustment, change in risk adjustment, which is shown in the insurance revenue, that can be created between insurance revenue and insurance service expenses as well, right? Either whole of it can be shown in insurance revenue or. So that was one concept I was thinking to, I will also check once and.
You are
that,
saying
like
that
how-
risk adjustment can be shown somewhere else. You are saying that.
No, I'm saying that, so instead of showing it in the insurance revenue, entire change we can show in the insurance revenue, or we can show between insurance revenue and insurance finance expense.
Insurance finance expense. So insurance finance
Yeah.
also, I think that is where that paragraph B96 is there. There is I remember that there is a debate over that. And the
Right.
debate is, so risk adjustment is for non-financial risk. You can see this, right? It's
Yes,
the
yes.
definitions calls
Yes.
out non-financial risk. So if you show that in the financial section, then you are countering or contradicting this definition, because then you are saying that risk adjustment change is happening here, which is for the financial risk. So that should not be the case. So there is a lot of debate. Few companies might do that. I mean, there are a couple of companies that might end up doing that, but as per me, that is not correct. Risk adjustment is for non-financial change, and it should stay in the non-financial zone only. It should not flow into the, kind of the financial zone. So that's even if you can show that in some manner, as per me, is once again, it's a principle based. That's my take on that. I think that is what is written in B96. I don't remember exactly, but I have to check that. But that was the concept. That risk adjustment is for non-financial risk. It should come in the non-financial risk. Okay, so tomorrow we are going to start with this because we have missed this section, insurance finance result, and tomorrow we are going to finish this and then go to VFA. And finally, hopefully, we can finish the PA as well. So tomorrow would be a big, long session. So we are going to start from what? 9:30 or 9:30? 9, I believe, right?
Yes, sir, but 9 would be fine.
9 o'clock, right? So tomorrow we are going to start from 9, and let us see, we are going to go till to 2 hour and 30 minutes, right? And hopefully we are going to cover this. Once we cover the GMM, then the VFA one would be slightly easier. So what I can do is I can also upload the VFA one as well. It's slightly more easier to understand because it's based on ULIP policy. So the cash flow modeling is slightly easier. And then we have to kind of check, how things goes from there, right? Okay, so let's see. Tomorrow we have a big day. Let's see. Hopefully we can cover everything, right? Okay. So
Thanks a
see you
lot.
tomorrow.
Thanks.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you, Arun.